We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Liberty Nation's senior political analyst, Tim Donner. Tim, we were just talking about how the Democrats in the Senate and the House are rather upset by Elon Musk's efforts with DOGE. And you pointed out that they seem quite upset that, and they're not defending each individual program, but rather they are decrying the fact that the public is really finding out at what this money has been spent on. And a couple of things I'd like to throw at you there is we've heard specifically that Elon Musk is unelected and has access to your social security number. The couple of things that I'd love to get your opinion on there is, number one, how many people within the USAID or the Treasury or the State Department have access to one's social security number? Probably everybody with access to a computer, right? And how many of those people are elected? I guess the answer there is a big fat zero.
Yes.
So why would Elon Musk be any different as somebody who's coming in to oversee? And the second thing that I'd really love you to come back on is you mentioned that they're not defending the spendings that have been made, but surely if these are cut this year, or if they're stopped because the money's already gone, that's the reality, right? If it's on those computer systems, the money's probably already gone. But it'll be next year that there starts to be a reduction, if there is one, in outgoings, which would then, assuming Donald Trump can get a bill passed that in the houses that reduces outlays, then that's where the big money savings will come from, right?
Yes, that's true. Well, the best that the left can do, and the Democrats, is to try and scare people into believing that Elon Musk is interested in your social security number so he can deprive you of your social security check. They're also, which is probably the last thing that Musk and his team of like 20-something computer geek geniuses that he has used to uncover just mountains of fraudulent, wasteful, repetitive, redundant, bloated spending. The last thing he's interested in is depriving anyone of their social security checks. But at the same time, I think it's becoming more and more clear that an awful lot of social security checks are going out to people who should not be receiving them. Those checks are going out to people who don't have a social security number, to people who have multiple social security numbers, for example, as best we understand it. So yes, there's abuse in that system, but the last thing he's going to do is deprive anybody who has a legitimate claim to Social Security from getting their money. Now, this is a system, Social Security, that for the first time is spending more than it's taking in, because the baby boomer generation, the largest in American history, is coming of age now, coming of retirement age. So the books are not balancing in Social Security, a system that has a so-called Social Security Trust Fund, which is always raided by the federal government, which then puts in a essentially worthless IOU into the Social Security Trust Fund, saying, we owe you this much. Of course, they never pay that back. So these are the kind of things, these are the kind of maneuvers that the federal government has been making for decades, with Americans having no clue, first of all, of what's going on, and where they've largely thrown up their hands and said, I guess there's just nothing we can do about it because it's so distant and so unaccountable, this bureaucracy. Well, Trump is trying to change that. And in terms of systemic change, nothing could be more significant than actually casting sunlight on all the ways that taxpayer money is being spent.
When you said about the U.S. government, the federal government dipping into the Social Security pot with IOUs, I think Robert Maxwell did something similar before his vast disappearing act, That money's never been recovered either. It seems to me, Tim, that what you say about Social Security, there's the issue that I think Trump might be trying to address, because the incomings don't match the outgoings, and that's a problem, because the federal government, through its Social Security programs, has a lot of money that's going to have to pay out. A lot of money coming because of the boom generation. But if they can fill the government coffers with tariffs, because tariffs, we hear about all it's the consumer that pays the tariffs. Well, not directly, certainly. That money goes directly to the federal government from those who are importing, and so they can make a pot of cash. And I wonder why so many people are pushing back on this, when that could be the only thing that can really save Social Security.
Well, Trump, of course, has hinted at creating a Department of External Revenue, which would be a clearinghouse for all the tariffs collected from foreign countries. And I think the important thing to point out about tariffs is, and of course, many conservatives, maybe most of them, oppose tariffs. They still have Vietnam flashbacks about the Smoot-Hawley Act in the 1920s that helped lead to the Depression. But I think there's two ways to look at tariffs. If tariffs are used to prop up failing industries that could not stand on their own, then they can be economically disastrous because it's pure protectionism. But if tariffs are being used, as Trump apparently intends to use them, to level the playing field so that we pay $200 billion to Canada, okay, as a basic subsidy, but they pay us just a fraction of that. Likewise with Mexico, likewise with China. If it's done to create an imbalance or to correct an imbalance in trade, then it can be very effective if, as the United States is, a country of maximum leverage, as the only real superpower in the world. I guess you could count China, but of course China is not a free country. So I think it's the intent of tariffs that will determine whether they are effective or not. Again, if you use them to prop up an industry that could not otherwise succeed, it's going to create the kind of disaster that the free market types object to, or that they foresee. But using it to level the playing field, as Trump intends, is a very different thing. And I think ultimately, since he is not interested in anything but making America great again, making it stronger, making it more powerful, making it safer, more secure, all of those things, that tariffs can be a very effective tool if the chief executive has the stomach to fight off all the objections, both from free market types and from Democrats and from world leaders.
Yeah, I find it fascinating when people say that tariffs aren't a subsidy, because, as we pointed out, the tariffs go to the government. So if there's a tariff imbalance between two countries, that's essentially, let's say one country's paying 100 billion into the US, but the US is paying 200 billion out. That's 100 billion in free cash that the foreign government gets.
And he understands, Trump understands, that these foreign countries must have access to the American market. Because if they don't, their own economies are going to suffer. I mean, what would it be like for China if they didn't have access to American markets where people buy cheap Chinese goods every single day in massive numbers? That would collapse the Chinese economy. So Trump realizes that, and he's using that leverage, unlike most presidents in the past.
It is indeed all about leverage. We're going to be back with Tim Donner after this short break to discuss what else is happening in the United States political scene. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.